Bertrand Russell said, "War does not determine who is right, only who is left." Following the end of World War II in 1939, every nation in the world began to build its artillery and personnel with the goal of becoming the best, most formidable, and strongest in the world. On a global scale, the United States and Russia may be considered the world's strongest militaries based on their arsenals, personnel numbers, and strategies. However, how do African countries fare on a global scale? Which countries on the African continent have the best military forces? What weapons are available, and what are the national defense budgets like? Today, we are going to rank the top 10 strongest armies on African soil based on Global Firepower, GFP. Since 2006, Global Firepower, GFP, has provided a unique analytical display of data concerning 142 modern military powers. The GFP ranking is based on each nation's potential war-making capability across land, sea, and air fought by conventional means. The results incorporate values related to manpower, equipment, natural resources, finances, fuel availability for military operations, and geography represented by 50-plus individual factors used in formulating the finalized GFP ranks, which provide an interesting glimpse into an increasingly volatile global landscape where war seems all but an inevitability. The Global Firepower determines a given nation's Power Index Number, PIN, score with categories ranging from military might and financials to logistical capability and geography. A perfect power index number is 0.0000, which is realistically unattainable. The smaller the PIN value, the more powerful a nation's theoretical fighting capability is. This is by conventional means, as nuclear capacity is not taken into account. Let's look at the latest rankings as of 2022, starting with the 10th. The Tunisian Armed Forces are ranked 10th. The Tunisian Armed Forces have a power index rating of 1.3664. This makes them rank 10th in Africa and 74th worldwide. With 36,000 active frontline personnel and 10,000 paramilitary reserve, the country has 954 armored vehicles, over 145 armored tanks, 151 warcrafts, and 40 naval assets. Despite the country's budgetary allocation of $1.18 billion for national defense, it still ranks 10th on the continent. The Sudanese Armed Forces are ranked 9th. The Sudanese Armed Forces have a power index rating of 1.3382. This makes them rank 9th in Africa and 73rd worldwide. The civil war-prone country commands some level of command with regards to being one of the top 10 best and most powerful militaries in Africa. Despite the havoc, Sudan's annual budgetary defense is estimated at $287 million. The country has over 100,000 active frontline military personnel, 50,000 reserve personnel, and 50,000 paramilitary personnel, and a large chunk of weaponry in their arsenal. The Libyan Armed Forces are ranked 8th. The Libyan Armed Forces have a power index rating of 1.3265. This makes them rank 8th in Africa and 72nd worldwide. Libyan military forces experienced the first civil war in 2011, which brought a halt to the reign of the dictatorship of Muammar Gaddafi's regime, which caused havoc and, therefore, restructuring to the country's military infrastructure that was affected during the war. Despite an annual budgetary allocation of $3.48 billion, Libya is still the 8th strongest national military force in Africa. Libya's military personnel of 30,000 spans across the ground forces, the Air Force, and the Navy, with over 100 armored tanks and 127 warcraft, safeguarding over 6 million Libyans. The Angolan Armed Forces are ranked 7th. The Angolan Armed Forces have a power index rating of 1.0931. This makes them rank 7th in Africa and 66th worldwide. Angola currently has 107,000 active military personnel on the front lines and 10,000 paramilitary service members. Based on their weaponry, Angola is proud of their 320 armored tanks and 299 warcraft. Based on the alliance the Angolan government has with the Russians, most of their weaponry is procured mostly from the Soviet Union, acquired back in the 80s during the prevalent civil war ravaging predominantly African countries and their neighbors. The Ethiopian National Defense Force is ranked 6th. The Ethiopian National Defense Force has a power index rating of 1.0798. This makes them rank 6th in Africa and 65th worldwide. Ethiopia has a $538 million defense budget, 150,000 ground forces personnel, 340 armored tanks, and 90 warcrafts. Ethiopia's military strength can be attributed to its noticeable active personnel and their rich arsenal. The Royal Moroccan Armed Forces are ranked 5th. The Royal Moroccan Armed Forces have a power index rating of 0.8573. This makes them rank 5th in Africa and 56th worldwide. Morocco has 200,000 active personnel and a $5.44 billion annual defense budget. The weaponry consists of 3,335 armored tanks and 249 warcraft, making them the 56th best military in the world. The Nigerian Armed Forces are ranked 4th. The Nigerian Armed Forces have a power index rating of 0.5745. This makes them rank 4th in Africa and 35th worldwide. The Nigeria military force is ranked as the 4th most powerful military force in Africa, despite the political and leadership fluctuations and non-continuity, corruption, and lack of sophisticated gadgets to combat insurgency and terrorism in the country. Despite these setbacks, Nigeria's armed forces have increased their military strength to nearly 2,019 armored vehicles, 376 armored tanks, 6,000 logistical vehicles, 140 warcrafts, and 133 naval assets, with an estimated budgetary defense allocation of about $5.88 billion, ranking them 4th in Africa. The Algerian People's National Armed Forces are ranked 3rd. The Algerian People's National Armed Forces have a power index rating of 0.4724. This makes them rank 3rd in Africa and 31st worldwide. With an active frontline personnel of 130,000 and the nation's budgetary allocation for national defense, estimated at $9.70 billion, the Algerian military force ranking according to GFP is rated as a formidable force. This budgetary allocation positioned them to be one of the most equipped militaries in Africa, with about 2,196 armored fighting vehicles at their disposal and placed them among the best military powers in African countries. The South African National Defense Force is ranked 2nd with a power index rating of 0.4276. This makes it the 2nd in Africa and 26th worldwide. South Africa boasts of possessing the latest, well-equipped warcraft and technology-driven naval vessels. The country has an estimated budgetary defense allocation of about $2.91 billion. It has over 72,000 active military personnel and 15,000 inactive reserve personnel, 195 Amur tanks, 225 warcraft, and 47 naval assets, which makes the GFP consider them the 2nd most powerful military in Africa in 2022. Egypt's armed forces are ranked 1st. The Egyptian armed forces have a power index rating of 0.1869. This makes them rank 1st in Africa and 12th worldwide. The Egyptian armed forces are rated by the GFP as the best, most powerful, and strongest military nation in Africa. Among other African countries, kudos to the size of their armed forces. According to GFP, Egypt's armed forces possessed 4,394 armored tanks, over 1,062 aircraft, 250 jet fighters, and a total naval strength of 245. In terms of personnel, the Egyptian armed forces have over 450,000 active personnel, over 480,000 in reserve, and over 300,000 paramilitaries. They are the African military giants, with a defense budgetary allocation estimated at $4.36 billion, the highest budgetary allocation so far on the continent. It must be emphasized again that these rankings are based on conventional warfare. Nuclear capacity is not taken into account. Thanks for watching. If you like this type of content, make sure you like the page and turn on the notification bell for more stories.